Do you long for that perfect person? That someone who will love you just the way that you want to be loved, who meets all of your needs and body, mind, and spirit? The husband or the wife who finally understands you, never disappoints you, and makes you feel like a whole person. Maybe deep down, you've been praying to the eHarmony Jesus. You know, the one who promises to deliver that soulmate to you who completes you. But what if the love that you're craving actually will never be found in a person at all? What if the relationship that your heart is aching for most is with the one who made your heart in the first place? Hey, welcome to the Kirk Show. If you're new here, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and then turn on the notifications so you never miss an episode of encouragement and truth. The best guide to understand how relationships work is not a pop psychologist, not a doctor, but the designer of your heart. We were created by God to love and to be loved. And God designed us for important relationships. Number one, relationship with Him first, and then horizontal relationships with others. That's why the longing for connection feels so natural to us. In fact, we feel like we can't live without it. But here's the key. God tells us that we cannot rightly love people until a love for God rules in our heart. So only when God is in His rightful place can every other relationship take its rightful shape. If God's love is not where you find your rest, you'll need human love way too much. You'll start asking people to do for you what only God can do, to give you your identity, your security, and a sense of purpose. And that never works. People try all the time. Every human being, even the best wife, the best husband, the best friend and partner, will fail you in some way. Eventually, they'll disappoint you, they'll hurt you, they'll misunderstand you. They can't be your savior. In fact, no one but God is qualified to fill that role. Okay, here's where it gets real. When God is not first in my heart, guess who I put there? Me. And when I climb onto that throne, I don't sit there humbly. I start acting like a demanding king, and not the kind who actually deserves the crown. No, I start play acting as though I were the king who rides in on a white horse, eyes blazing like fire, my name written on my thigh, and a sword coming out of my mouth, striking down the nations before me. No, that is the kind of imagery that only fits with Jesus. But in my pride, if I'm honest, I try it on like a costume. And then I start issuing royal decrees to my family, to people at work, even to friends. Serve me, please me, meet my needs. And then I start making every relationship about my happiness and every disappointment about their failure. With that mindset, I want to rule, not serve. I want to be adored and applauded, not transformed. But the truth is, I'm an imposter king. I'm sitting on a borrowed throne, and that throne only belongs to Jesus Christ. Maybe you can relate to my problem. It's not a new problem. It's a human problem. And Jesus addressed it head on in Mark chapter 12, verse 28. When one of the teachers of the law asked Jesus which commandment is the most important of all, Jesus replied, "The most important commandment is this. Listen, O Israel, the Lord our God is the one and only Lord. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. The second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. No other commandment is greater than these." So Jesus is saying, get the order right. When you love God first, you finally learn how to love people best. So here's the hope for imposter kings like me, setting ourselves up on a fake throne in our own mini kingdom. God does not leave us stuck in those broken patterns of thinking. He gives us grace, and it rewires our loves. God's grace frees us from needing others to validate us, others to serve us, and it roots us in the truth that we are already fully known and fully loved by God. When that truth takes a hold of your heart and your mind, it changes everything. We stop demanding from others what we're only designed for God to provide. And you can finally begin to love people freely, not out of desperation and necessity, but unhindered, not as idols, but as gifts. So let me ask you again, are you looking to the eHarmony Jesus, the one who promises you a perfect human love story? Or are you ready to follow the real Jesus, the one who writes your love story with himself at the center? The first one offers you some temporary satisfaction and eventual heartbreak, but the second one offers eternal transformation. So when you let God's love fill the deepest places of your heart, you won't just be ready to love when the right person comes along, you'll finally know how to love. Do you feel like your values are under fire? That's why I am so grateful to partner with America's Christian Credit Union. They've just launched their new elite checking program, taking your banking to the next level with things like 4% APY on balances under $15,000. Plus, early pay means you get paid up to 2 days sooner, exclusive loan discounts, plus cell phone protection, ID theft monitoring, and everyday shopping perks that you are going to love. Best of all, ACCU is working together with Christians to further God's work across the country. And if you're already a member, you can easily upgrade your current checking account to Elite. So if you're ready for a checking account that truly supports you and reflects your values, visit americaschristiancu.com/Kirk and get started today. All right, let's open up the mailbag. Love when you send in questions. Just write them in the comment section and James will bring them up on a Monday. What do we got?
All right, the first question we have is from Suzanne, and she says, what should I look for in choosing a church that helps me have a personal relationship with Jesus?
Suzanne, this is such a great question. I have found it challenging to find a great church, but the answer is really pretty simple. You want to find a fellowship of believers who are offering accurate Bible teaching, not religious traditions sprinkled with some emotionalism and a little Jesus. You want good doctrine, faithful teaching of the scriptures. You want love, true love among the members, and you want cultural engagement. So we're not just sitting around talking about ideas, but we're putting them into practice. We're exporting these biblical principles as salt and light into a rotting and dark world to bring life and light everywhere. Now, that's easier said than done in a day today where there's so many charlatans and phonies and performative religious organizations out there. So I would look to someone you respect who loves their church, a person whose faith you believe is genuine, whose life honors God, and say, where do you go to church? Can you help me find a church? Could I go with you one Sunday? Are there any others you would recommend I might try with a younger congregation or a different style of worship? Maybe you love the hymn, something more liturgical and traditional versus something contemporary, or the other way around. And then try some places and ask God, the Holy Spirit, to guide you to the right place. And I think eventually you'll have a peace in your heart and you will be challenged intellectually. You'll be convicted in your conscience and you will be invigorated to live a life that honors God. I found that at a little Presbyterian church recently. It's a Presbyterian Church of America. There's a couple of different denominations there. In fact, there's hundreds of denominations. And so I think you just need to work through it until you find a place you believe is solid. All right, next question.
All right, the next question we have is from Kathy, and she says, Kirk, what are your thoughts on cancel culture?
So my thoughts on cancel culture are that whenever you find someone just got their microphone pulled or their platform deplatformed and you can't hear from them anymore, it sounds like they're a pretty big threat to those who pulled the plug. And I think it's an admission that they can't win the argument if they let these people continue to speak. So they deplatform them. They cancel them. They say, nope, you don't get to hear them anymore. Of course, they like to posture by saying, well, we're just being responsible and making them accountable for the wrong things they're saying. Usually not. We have free speech and they wouldn't want to be canceled. So they say this, but really they just don't want them to talk because they're probably really good at communicating a message that they don't like. The only cancel culture that I am for is the one that Colossians 2:14 talks about. Christ canceled the record of charges against us and took it away by nailing it to the cross. In this way, he disarmed the spiritual rulers and authorities. He shamed them publicly by his victory over them on the cross. Jesus canceled our sin debt and the requirements of the law forever. I am all for that cancel culture.
All right, the next question we have is from Tim, and he says, what are your thoughts on global warming? Is this an issue that will seriously affect our children or our grandchildren?
Yes, I think that global warming can affect our children and grandchildren because when it gets hotter, we deal with it. When it gets colder, we got to deal with that too. And this is obviously a controversial topic. People can get their hair on fire over this kind of thing. But what I find really interesting is that those who really press the issue of global warming being an existential threat are giving you a very narrow view of the recorded temperatures of the world. If you zoom back, you'll find out that not only are we in a period where things may be rising temperature-wise, actually you'll find out that many scientists are now saying we're about to turn the corner and enter into a cooling phase, just like we have done before. And if you back up, you'll see that we've had cooling phases, and the scare of global cooling, we've had ice ages in the past where things get way too cold. Then they start to warm up and we're glad it's getting warmer. And then we can exaggerate that and get people into hysteria thinking it's going to get so hot that everything's going to burn down, or it's going to get so cold we're going to go back into ice age time. Here's the truth. The temperature of the earth is a massive thing that we don't really understand. And that human production of carbon emissions and greenhouse gases that change the temperature, according to most scientists, is actually very small compared to the natural forces. We talked earlier in another episode about underwater volcanoes like Hunga Tonga, which was a massive event nobody talked about in the news that shot massive amounts, like millions of tons of water vapor up into the air and ash that contributed significantly to greenhouse gases much stronger than anything that we're producing as human beings. We're also learning that the polar ice caps are expanding. More ice is growing. In a situation where we have global warming, how is that possible? How do you make ice cubes in an oven? But yet these things have to be accounted for. Where I land is to come back to the scriptures and remember who's actually in control of the weather. Listen to Psalms and Job, Nahum and Hebrews. God controls the rain and the wind. God has power over the clouds and the lightning. The weather is often an instrument of God's judgment or his protection. And events like storms are described as having their origin in the power and authority of God. The book of Job describes snow and hail as being reserved for the time of trouble, and as God upholding all things by his powerful word. He works all things together for good. Rising temperatures, cooling temperatures, the weather is at his command and disposal. Jesus stops the storm and walks on the water. So at the end of the day, what do we do with all of this? I don't know how it works together, but God is sovereign and we have responsibility. So I think we should take care of the planet he's given us and trust him with the results.
All right, the next question we have is from Sabrina, and she says, do you think that TikTok should be banned within the U.S.?
Well, I think that, Sabrina, social media in general is not healthy for people. I have it on my phone. Maybe some are less dangerous than others. I don't know. I think the main concern with TikTok is that it's Chinese owned and there could be nefarious things, collecting information and all of that. But the bad things about TikTok or Instagram, X, Facebook, whatever, can also be reported on through Facebook, TikTok, X, and whatever. So it's a double-edged sword with all social media platforms. You've got the ability for bad things to happen and kids to be indoctrinated and parents to be distracted and all of that. But you've also got the good part that we can share ideas, that freedom of speech and information now can get to all the world through the same platforms. And so we have to be very careful and responsible. Interesting about TikTok, the concern with them particularly is that they are owned by a Chinese company. And now we're hearing stories that TikTok is perhaps going to be bought away from the Chinese company by an American, very similar to what Elon Musk did with Twitter.
All right, the next comment is from All I Do 42, and they say, Kirk, you can't make up your mind on whether you want to be an actor, a politician, or a priest. Pick one.
Well, it sounds like you can't decide what you want to do either. You're called All I Do 42. Pick a job. It's hard to pick a job. When I was a kid, wanted to be a doctor. I never wanted to be an actor. So this wasn't even my idea. It just sort of fell into my lap when I was about 10 years old and started working on TV. So I don't want to be an actor. As far as a politician, man, I'd never want to be a politician, although we need good people of faith and character and leadership positions to represent us in Congress. But I like what Ben Carson said. He said, we've been conditioned our whole lives to think that only politicians can solve the problems. And then we found out the politicians are the ones who created the problems. And as far as being a priest, I'm not a priest. In fact, I'd make a terrible priest. I'm already disqualified. I love my wife and we have 6 children. I mean, they would ban me from the priesthood. So I'll just keep doing what I'm doing, even if I don't have a very concise job description. Thanks for your question.
All right, the next question we have is from Chris, and he says, what is your favorite football team? In parentheses, go Titans.
Well, I am here in Tennessee, so I'll cheer for the Titans, but not like I'm going to cheer for the Bills. I'm part of the mafia. I mean, my wife is from Buffalo, New York. I got married in Buffalo, New York. I've met Jim Kelly, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith, Andre Reed, Steve Tasker. Back in the glory days when we went to 4 Super Bowls, we never won one. But man, was it fun. And just being at Rich Stadium in the snow, kicking ice off of the aluminum benches, freezing cold. We've just always been fans. And so we wave the flag in our living room. We've got the little theme, the Bills make me want to shout, on a little red button, and we watch all the games that we can. Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, any day that it's playing, we're huge Bills fans.
All right, next up is a question from Uncle Bud, and he says, hey, Kirk, what is your take on submission as described in Ephesians 5?
Ephesians chapter 5 is that passage, everyone, where God is talking to the community of faith, and then specifically going into the marriage relationship with husbands and then and wives. And people love to point out the submission thing, but everyone needs to back up in the verses a little bit and understand what submission actually is. It's falling under authority and rank, and that is defined by what Jesus does with God the Father. So is Jesus and God the Father, is there a hierarchy of authority and value there between the Father and the Son? No, there's not. They're co-equal, they're co-eternal, they're co-creators, they're right? Like you'd never put a hierarchy there. However, Jesus submits himself to the Father. The Father defers to the Son, and with the Holy Spirit, for that matter, all throughout the Scriptures. Jesus says, I'm going away and I'm sending someone, and it's going to be better for you that he comes because of what he does. And they're constantly all submitting to one another, pointing to one another and glorifying one another. And this is the context for wives submitting to husbands and husbands submitting to wives as well. And all of us submitting to one another. This is an attitude and posture of humility. And the scriptures actually say, before Ephesians chapter 5, to wives, submit to one another. So if we want to talk about roles within a marriage, we can talk about that. But this idea of submission is a beautiful idea that all of us should understand and be really grateful for. If you love America, but you don't love American health insurance, I don't blame you. There's a great solution for Christians. It's called Christian Healthcare Ministries. It's half the cost, a practical alternative. I've been using it for years. It's super affordable. We love knowing our monthly payments help other believers. They have low-cost programs for any stage of life, whether you're single, you're a family, you're retired. Don't miss out on these huge savings and compassionate support. Join CHM today. Visit chministries.org/Kirk. That's chministries.org/Kirk. Hey, you guys, thanks for watching. I hope you have a great rest of the week. James?
Yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're notified when the next episode comes out. And leave us a question in the comment section below so we can read that on a future Monday episode. Have a good day.